everyone, welcome to Art of the Unquiet Grave. If you're new here, I'm Ash, and on my channel I typically do dark, gothic, or spooky DIYs, and today is a return to form. So if you've been on the channel before, you'll know that I moved a couple months back and had sort of unexpected house issue after unexpected house issue. So despite my best efforts, I haven't been on YouTube very much recently, and I haven't been regular about posting, and I'm sorry about that, but I'm getting back in the game, getting back to what we're doing today. So basically, around the same time that I moved, if you haven't heard me tell this story before, Tommy's right here. If you haven't heard me tell this story before, around the same time that I was moving, I was given a bunch of beautiful antique furniture that I wanted to restore or finish or make generally spookier, more my aesthetic, right? But since I only ever did small like end tables or like curio cabinets before when I had refinished furniture, I wanted to sort of start with a more modern piece so I didn't ruin an antique. So big reveal, the two Ouija projects that we're going to be doing. The first one that I wanted to do for you guys was actually refinishing a Ashley Furniture dining room table and turning it into a giant Ouija board. So that's actually going to be the second video that I have coming out for you guys. That project went well and basically without a hitch. But then I was like, you know what? I want to do like a little tabletop accessory, and what's a Ouija board without a planchette? So I thought that I needed to make a planchette. So I wanted to make one that was like this is back in February, mind you, that I had this idea, but it was a Lazy Susan, a heart-shaped Lazy Susan that I found at Home Goods that sort of kicked off this idea. And I thought, obviously, if you take a heart and flip it upside down, it looks very much like a planchette. So today we are making the Lazy Susan planchette for our Ouija board table. That'll be coming up next. So like with every project I've ever done, the simpler it is, the easier it is. For some reason, the longer it takes me. I don't know why. So this was an easy project, but it took me forever to film it and edit it for you guys. So I'm sorry about that. But without further ado, let's jump into it, and I will talk to you about the materials you'll need, and then after I do that, show you the whole process. I'll see you at the end for the reveal. Okay, so I'm just taking an old paint lid that I had lying around and using that as a circular template for our Ouija planchette hole, and a paddle drill bit to cut out our hole. Now, I should mention that since this is a Lazy Susan and it's on a turntable, I should have used a vise or something to hold this steady while I was drilling. I was too busy trying not to lop off a finger that I didn't realize how very, very off-center I drilled our hole until it was too late. Don't worry, I'm going to camouflage that later to the best of my abilities, but for right now I'm just taking an acrylic all-in-one paint with a primer and sealant built in, and we're using that to paint our base. Now here I'm rolling out some Sculpey clay, and we're going to make a very crude ring shape, obviously to add some ornamentation, but more importantly, hopefully to camouflage how very off-center our hole cutout is. So once I have an incredibly rough ring shape, I'm just going to take that and place that on the planchette itself and try to figure out the best way to camouflage the off-centeredness. So after our base paint has dried, I'm just taking a sanding sponge from Dollar Tree and using that very gently to knock back some brush strokes that were on top of the surface there before we put on our graphic. Now this Ouija graphic I got off of a free clip art site. I'll see if I can link that for you below. But you're going to want to reverse your image. And then we're going to add you could use Mod Podge for this, but I had some polyurethane lying around, and you're going to coat your base and your graphic. Now once you have that polyurethane or Mod Podge or whatever you end up using on both surfaces, you're going to flip your graphic over so white side of the paper facing you, and leave that to dry for 24 hours if you can. So once that's dry, you're going to take some water on your finger and very gently start rubbing the backing away to your image. And that'll make it look like it's printed directly on your base there instead of just being pasted on. Now I'm using some air-dried Sculpey and a filigree mold that I have, and we're going to make a like an ornate border for our planchette. Now initially I was thinking I was just going to use like a more understated, subtle like bead border that they have here, and I did like that for a second, and then I realized, you know what? I like ostentatious stuff. So after I put this down around the border, I'm going to go back in with a much more ornate filigree print, and I'll add that too. So you'll see that in a second. There we are. And that's more like it. So I'm going to add that and sort of layer that beaded border and that filigree border, smoothing it with my fingers as I'm going. So I used Sculpey brand air dry clay like I mentioned, and I didn't have too much of a problem with it, but depending on what air dry clay you use, you might notice that you get some shrinking and cracking as your clay is set to dry. If you have that happen, you're just going to have to go in and fill in any gaps that occur, that might occur while it's drying. But like I said, I didn't have too much of a problem with that. So I'm just going in with some water on my finger and smoothing out the edges, trying to blend it into the base of our planchette here. So now I'm taking that same Folk Art all-in-one paint with the primer and sealer built in, but obviously in the black this time, and we're going to paint our border. I think I only needed one coat of this, it's very opaque, but I do know that I went back in with a little bit of a diluted paint wash just to try to get in some of those nooks and crannies of the filigree more easily. And so now I'm laying it on kind of thick on the sides here, hopefully trying to blend the top and the sides together for a more seamless look. Now you might notice on the edges there on the inside of our planchette that you can see that it's kind of messy with the paint, but I wanted to go for a more antiqued, aged look, so I'll be showing you in a second how we're going to address that and lean into it a little bit. Okay, so now here I'm just taking some diluted acrylic paint, that same one I showed you before, and we're just doing like a paint wash on the inside to try to make it look a little more antiqued. And then once you have your paint laid down, I actually end up going back in with just a clean, wet paintbrush to dilute it even more. And then I'm going to go in and wipe away any excess and try to sort of feather it out and blend it just to make it look a little grungy and aged. So here I am just going in with a paper towel and wiping the excess back. Now you can see that I ended up like rubbing a little too overzealously on some of the lettering there, and I lost some pieces, and that works great for a distressed look, but I did want to add some depth back into lettering. So like on the top where the Ouija print is, I did go back in with the Sharpie and fill some of those blank areas back in later. So here I'm going in with that same white paint that we used for our base, and I'm just adding like a little bit of a dry brushing on top to bring out some of those details in the filigree. Now, I will admit, I did change my mind about this later. I felt like it looked too gray and I didn't like it, but I'll explain that more at the end when we do our wrap-up. So after that dried, I decided I wanted to add some glass in for our planchette, and I had an old Dollar Tree candle where the lid fit perfectly in that center there, so I glued that in, and here's the reveal. So we finally finished it after numerous delays, but I am very pleased with how it turned out. I do want to talk to you about one thing though. Oh, the light. Sorry about that. You may notice that it doesn't have the white highlight on it anymore, and the reason for that is because when I actually put it on the finished Ouija board table, the white highlight didn't quite go. The other one's a lot like cleaner lines, if that makes sense, and more just straight up black and white and less of that gray highlighting. So we just left it the glossy black on the edges there, and I'm pleased. I'm very happy with how it turned out. So I hope you enjoyed this. I'm sorry it took me so long to get it out for you guys, but stay tuned for the next project, which is, again, the actual dining room table, which is hiding underneath here, which you can't see right now. So I will see you in the next one, and I hope you enjoy it. And let me know in the comments what you guys have been up to, and I will talk to you soon.